bill, and this is House Bill number 4953. This is to declare Balangay as the national boat of the Philippines, authored by Congressman Fortun. You have the floor to sponsor the measure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. Good morning to our distinguished chairman. He's a former colleague in the House and one of our most productive members then. Senator Ivy, good morning as well to our fellow members of the House here present and our resource persons and guests, Madyaw nga hinaat kaninyong tanan. Mr. Chairman, this measure, which we call the Balangay Bill, is long overdue. It was approved on second reading by the House of Representatives in the 16th Congress and also approved on third and final reading by the House and transmitted to the Senate in the 17th Congress, but was overtaken by events leading to the 2019 elections. Currently, Mr. Chairman, this is the farthest the Balangay Bill has sailed and reached. Not only has it been transmitted to the Senate, but already being taken up in your committee. And for this, we are very thankful to the distinguished chairman for having this included in the agenda. Mr. Chairman, this measure seeks to declare an ancient boat known as the Balangay, which is a testament to the early Filipinos' boat building genius and seafaring expertise as the national boat of the Philippines. The Balangay was the first ever wooden watercraft to be excavated in the Southeast Asia, demonstrating our ancestors' advanced aptitude in building boats designed for long distance navigation and sailing them to the high seas. Found only in the Philippines, where a flotilla of the ancient boat exists, the Balangay was utilized by our ancestors to engage in and maintain trade relations, not only with countries and empires in the Southeast Asia, but also as far as China. The extensive utilization of this boat, Mr. Chair, for trade purposes confirms the active involvement of our early Filipinos in robust commercial activities in Asia as early as the 10th and 11th centuries. The technology used in building this boat is unique to the Balangay. The building of this boat was done without the use of blueprints, and the technology was thought to be made from one generation to another using an ancient technique that has been preserved and I think until now is still being employed by boat makers of the Cebuto Island. Mr. Chairman, as demonstrated by our ancestors, building and sailing the Balangay entail solidarity, harmony, and courage among boat builders and seafarers. It is for this reason, Mr. Chairman, that this is now being used by the Philippine government for decades already to refer to the smallest political unit, now known as the barangay. The barangay thus symbolizes the Filipino community's character of unity, cooperation, courage, determination, and resilience. In 2010, Mr. Chairman, a group of Filipinos whom we hail as among the heroes of our time, led by Yusek Art Valdez, embarked on an ambitious project of retracing the seafaring route of our ancestors aboard the Balangay. They built three replicas and sailed them to different parts of the Southeast Asia. And the most recent voyage, Mr. Chair, was to China to celebrate 600 years of the voyage of the Balangay to that country. Uh, Mr. Chairman, we need a symbol for the country. We need a symbol for the smallest communities, for the smallest political unit of the country, which is the barangay. And this is to only formalize this long recognition already, Mr. Chairman, because no less than our laws, our constitution already call our smallest political unit the barangay, which is which comes from the word balangay. And Mr. Chairman, uh, in 1987, uh, then President Corazon Aquino issued Presidential Proclamation number 86, entitled Declaring the Balangays in the Vicinities of Butuan City national cultural treasures, and the sites where these balangays are found, archaeological sites, in accordance with sections 3C and 3J, respectively, of Republic Act number 4846 as amended, otherwise known as the Cultural Properties Preservation and Protection Act, Mr. Chairman. In this, for these reasons, Mr. Chairman, we appeal to the committee to approve this bill and finally have a symbol for our country. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Kong. Thank you for the very inspiring and um, very inspiring opening speech and very inspiring sponsorship speech. Definitely, barangay is etched in our history, and we hear that a lot, especially if you're in public service, because of the smallest political unit of our land, which is the barangay. However, I was reading the transcript in the House. No, apparently, to my surprise, the comment of the National Museum representative is the word barangay cannot be directly linked to the word balangay. No? Um, can you enlighten me because you were there at the hearing? Can you enlighten us on that discussion? Because I always thought that barangay came from the word balangay, and I was doing my own research. Apparently, the most popular mode of transportation back then was the barangay, no? And it was transporting families, transporting communities. It was the only mode of transportation that created our present civilization. Um, but then again, I was quite surprised when they made a comment that it was never proven that it came from that word. But can you enlighten us on that discussion, Kong Lawrence?
Mr. Chairman, as far as I can remember, I think the National Museum, if ever made that comment, probably submitted a position paper on the issue. But I do not remember the National Museum, particularly Jeremy Barnes, uh, stating that manifestation before the committee verbally, Mr. Chairman. I don't remember. Since the 16th Congress, they've been supporting the measure to declare this as a national boat. But I don't particularly remember, Mr. Chairman, that comment. Mr. Chairman, about
Yan.
seven of the people deeply involved in the Balangay Voyage project are with us here today, and perhaps, Mr. Chairman, we can also hear from them.
Ito po yung transcript, no? This is the transcript from August 28 hearing, 2019 in the House. And in the transcript, let me just quote the transcript. Somebody asked him, no, to the query if the barangay, as the smallest political unit in the country, was derived from Balangay. Dr. Barnes responded that the National Museum has no way to validate this claim, although this was well-established tradition handed down since Spanish time. So, although he is speaking in behalf of National Museum, um, but common knowledge dictates that the barangay came from Balanghay. Nevertheless, I'm not a historian or an expert in history, and but I was quite surprised now with this statement. But we have invited some experts to shed light on this matter, and thank you, Kong Fortun, Kong Lawrence, for um, guiding us on who to invite and shed light on this proposal. First, we call on Mr. Alejandre of the National Commission for the Culture of the Arts, NCCA and CAA. ED, any comments and any opinion on the matter?
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Senator Gatchalian, and Senator Marcos, and to the proponent, Congressman Lawrence Fortun, and the rest of the congressmen there, and our guests. Magandang umaga, maayong buntag sa tanan.
Knowledge
Uh,
from public.
This is regarding House Bill number 4953 and not declaring in the Balangay as a national boat of the Philippines. Our official position from the National Commission for Culture and the Arts, may we respectfully reiterate our previous comments made on this proposed legislation. First and foremost, we would like to thank our honorable representatives for jointly authoring this bill. The Commission acknowledged the historical and cultural significance of the Balangay, as well as the ideals, values, and tradition it represents. We find nothing legally objectable in this bill, Mr. Chair, as long as it is clear in the act that Balangay shall refer to all discovered and soon to be discovered Balangay in the Philippines, and not solely the Butuan boats or the Balangays in Butuan. We will advocate this passage, Mr. Chair. Nevertheless, the Balangays in the vicinities of Butuan City declared the national cultural treasures in accordance with the proclamation as mentioned by Congressman Fortun a while ago, Proclamation 86 in 1987 by former President Corazon si Aquino. This is the highest category, Mr. Chair, given to the cultural property, no, are continuously safeguarded and conserved, no, protected, preserved, and promoted by the National Commission for Culture and the Arts, particularly of the National Museum of the Philippines by virtue of Republic Act number 10066 or the National Cultural Heritage Act of 2009, Mr. Chair. Other than this, we defer also, Mr. Chair, to the wisdom of our affiliated cultural agencies such as National Museum of the Philippines and the National Historical Commission of the Philippines for their necessary inputs. But again, Mr. Chair, on behalf of the National Commission for Culture in the Arts, we will advocate for the approving on this passage, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, EDL. EDL, just clarificatory. You mentioned in your position paper that it should refer to all the discovered balangays in the Philippines. Educate me, no? And I apologize for my ignorance. The balangay is a mode of transportation throughout the Philippines. Hindi lang siya ginagamit, let's say, in parts of Agusan or parts of Mindanao. Is it a common mode of transportation throughout the Philippines?
Uh, Mr. Chair, way back, itong balangay na to, yes, you're right. You're correct. This is the mode of transportation. Ito yung ginagamit nila for barter, no, if they go across the other countries, no, at saka dito po sa Pilipinas, no. So yung sa amin lang din hindi lang po sa Butuan, no, yung gumagawa nito. Meron din tayo part in Hulu, Sulu, Mr. Chair. So yun yung aming position din na hindi lang po doon sa Butuan, no, if ever we could also discover itong mga balangay boats, but other parts in the Philippines also, Mr. Chair, no? With regards with this balangay as a national boat of the Philippines.
So what you're saying is the balangay is a generic brand for this type of boat, for this type of vessel. Meaning there will be other balangays being used, let's say in Luzon or in Visayas. But for this type of design, uh, they call it the balangay.
Uh, Actually, Mr. Chair, when I went to Butuan last March for the arts and cultural meeting that time, so pumunta ako sa National Museum. They would explain to me about the balangay. No? Sabi nila daw is nanggaling yung mga workers from Butuan, and then a few years later pumunta daw sa Sulo, no? Hulo along the those areas. So meron din gumagawa doon. Until now, meron pa rin gumagawa doon sa area na yon, Mr. Chair.
Um, we'll go back to that, ED. Don't leave yet, but we invited other experts also, as requested by Congressman Lawrence. I think these other experts can also shed light to us on the on the history of Balangay. Mr. Valdez, Voyage of Balangay. Mr. Valdez,
Okay.
you recognize?
Yes. Yes, Your Honor, Mr. Chair, Senator Gatchalian, Senator Aimee, uh, Congressman Fortun, and the distinguished members of the panel. It's an honor to be a part of this hearing. And let me just briefly share with you why put, I breathe life and meaning into this balangay. Right after Mount Everest, we still have our adrenaline hanging around us. So we thought of why not trace the migration of our forefathers, where we came from, which is mainland Asia. So, and this has something to do at the same time where perhaps where the word balangay, when they can build a bigger boat, family, family or families rode on that boat. And as they sailed around, when they reached the vast Pacific and Indian Ocean, or like here in the Philippines, they they stayed along riverines, along the bank of the river, and the boat served as a houseboat. So it's not only one family, but at times depends upon the size of the boat, several families. Perhaps that's where the gathering of families, the word barangay came from. Now, the word balangay is the boat can be found. It is. I agree with you, Mr. Senator, that it is generic. Somewhere in Cagayan, it's called barangay. Barangay. Somewhere in the Visayas, it is called balangay. But in Butuan, it is called balangay. But the hull shape is generic. So in a way that reflects it to be a national boat. But when we built the boat, because we would like to see really that this balangay, as used by our forefathers, we cannot find boat builders. I tried to look around, we cannot find it. Why? And then only through the National Museum, they directed me to Tawi-Tawi in the island of Sibuto or in Batanes. So why at the extremities, they still keep that culture of building boats? Because colonialism discourage us. So in a way, Mr. Chair, we built this boat. It's a way to retrieve back that proud maritime heritage of our forefathers. The, the Philippines is an archipelago. We are more water than land. A real wealth lies in our maritime domain. That's why the boat is symbolic of that maritime culture. But that has gone unlost because colonialism made us think that we're a land-based people. That's why we're so cramped up in Metro Manila when we have so much vast areas outside of these land-based areas. We made to think as a land-based people when we're really a maritime people. And the Balangay simply restore us back to that proud historical and maritime culture, which we hope, Mr. Chair, you'll be able to put it together because it will reflect the proud maritime culture of our people. That's why the Philippines is the number one supplier of seafarers. Seafaring is in our DNA. And they rode on that generic hull called the Balangay. Of course, I can talk more, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chair, but you can just ask me some questions later because there are other members of the panel. But indeed, as I said, we sailed for 18 months. We've been through 12 typhoons and LPAs. But the fact that I'm here to share with your story show the seaworthiness of that Balangay. And it is just fitting that we put it in a pedestal that Filipinos can relate themselves, that the Balangay is their national boat. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Thank you. I do agree,
Mm.
Mr. Valdez, on your comment that the Philippines can be a maritime powerhouse. In fact, and my staff can attest to this, I was putting together a maritime promotions industry law because I really believe that the Philippines can be a maritime powerhouse at this present age. If you look at Greece during those times, the wealthiest and the most richest tycoons came from Greece, and it came from southern Greece, in which they were the maritime powerhouse during the 60s and the 70s. The family of Oasis, which is one of the richest families in the world, was a maritime entrepreneur. No, he built boats. He had shipping lines. He had shipping containers. And Greece, in the southern part, is more or less like the Philippines. No, it's a archipelagic. Um, it looks like an archipelagic feature, and that's why I really believe that the Philippines can be a maritime powerhouse. And just look at our um, the number of compatriots, the number of Filipinos working in the maritime industry in the world. It's already reaching more than half of the maritime personnel working in cruises, working in container lines are all Filipinos. Ang hindi lang natin naabot yung kapitan eh. Tsaka yung mga matataas na rango. Pero if you look at the mechanics, if you look at the ones maintaining the boats, they're all Filipinos. And I really believe that the maritime industry is a huge potential for our country. And I'm happy to learn today that it draws back to even way before, no, during pre-Spanish age, that the maritime industry is really part of our power, not only part of our culture but part of our economic development. So the proposal of Kong Lawrence draws a very clear line between our potential and what we were once before. So I really agree that the maritime sector is one sector that we can be good at, and we should draw inspiration from our forefathers. Um, Let me call on Dr. Ted Esguera of Voyage of the Balangay. Also, this from the same group, Dr. Ted.
Hi, good morning. Good morning, Mr. Chair, Senator Salian, and also Senator Amy Marcos, ma'am. And good morning to the members of the committee and to all congressmen there, particularly to our comrade in Balangay, Congressman Fortun, Daw Fortun. And I would like to greet my fellow expedition leaders and members. My position is like this. Same as your statement a while ago, sir. Balangay is like a generic term. Fleet of boats. A fleet of boats describes to can describe it, and I'll transliterate it in English. He saw our gleaming and gleaming with ships and boats of different shapes and sizes. So ibig sabihin noon, bago pa ang Wright brothers nakagawa ng eroplano, when you rule the seas, you rule the earth. So I'm gonna bring you back again to the 12th century during the Srivijaya. And then it went into Majapahit, wherein Nusantara, the word Nusantara is mentioned, and it was in its glorious stature. We are archipelago, including Indonesia, before we were divided by the colonials. And we were using boats. Our seas became our highway. And we are really the maritime people. Our scholars, our soldiers, traders meet those boats, and even houses, particularly in Sulu, they call it lepak, are houseboats. So when Magellan reached the shores, was met by by the leader of Nasawa, si Raha Siao, and then he even saw a boat, Sir Chair, with 100 rowers on one side. Isipin mo anong klaseng boat yun with 100 rowers on one side. Ibig sabihin yung ating maritime glory nandun na. And then I'm being brought back into some terms like, for example, Ibanag, facing the Pacific. They have Balangay, they call Biray. Another tribe call it Biwang. So there are lots of names, Garay, Salipsipan, Depende kung ano ang kanyang usage. Pwede ba siya pang marauding, pang like a seat of government, pag malakihan. And we have perfected some sort of uh, creating the hull. That's why we were termed as the Vikings of Asia. And when Magellan reached our islands, doon siya sa giwan yung Umonhon, pinuntahan siya ng mga ancestors natin sailing on a prahu. Itong prahu, maririnig nyo na lang po ito sa Malaysia, sa Indonesia. And this is another Balangay Boat wherein the team of Magellan, nagkasakit sila ng scurvy because of vitamin C deficiency while crossing the Great Pacific Ocean. And they were treated there. Nakita mo yung advancement with the boat na we are so advanced in so many ways. We are using spices. We are our art form are quite advanced. Kaya nga nung si Beatles, if you remember Mr. Chair, nung nakasagsagan ng kasikatan nila, pumunta sila sa India kasi medyo predictable na yung music to understand Oriental music. So going back to our maritime greatness, symbols become a subliminal language to people. For example, when you talk about Russia, they have the bear. You talk about the US, they have the bald eagle. You talk about the Middle East or the Islamic countries, they use the color like green or strong green. Tayo, wala tayong national symbol. Using this balangay will be a symbol na we were so great before so that it will rekindle something in our destroyed psyche when we were destroyed by our colonials. Na meron man lang tayong aapakan ng church here, ang ating mga kabataan, na I was great. My ancestors were great. Riding in the great boat, crossing the treacherous Pacific and even Indian Ocean. So, with this proposal to make it as a symbol, I hope that we will really put into our bring back the greatness of the Filipinos by starting with symbolism. And thank you very much, Honorable Chair and the members for giving us the opportunity to tell you something of the greatness of the Filipino people.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ted. We now call on Mr. Fong Yu, Team Balangay.
Hi, yes po. Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Conlo, and to everyone present. May opening statement sana po ako, kaya lang halos lahat na-mention na ni Mr. Valdez at ni Fortun. Let me just put a few more facts in context. Yung original Balangay Boat natin, they were first unearthed in Butuan, in 1976. Now, ang oldest carbon dated was around 320 AD. But then, etong study, there's a newer study made that placed the age of the Balangay in around late 9th or early 10th century. Still, this is more than 500 years before Magellan even set foot in our soil, no? And of course, the Balangay molds were eventually declared national cultural treasures. But at the same time, yung first Balangay replica namin na ginawa during 2009, it was also declared as an important cultural property by the National Museum. Yun po yung naka-display dun sa site ng TAF for 4 years bago siya tinanggal for restoration. Now, currently, there are actually two cultures who can actually build the Balangay Boat. One is, of course, yung mga Sama de Laya sa Tawi-Tawi, si Hugo si Tangkay, and of course, the Ivatan sa Batanes. So, gaya na sinabi ni Sir Art, extreme north and extreme south because they were less touched by colonization. Now, Jose Rizal once said, in his essay, Philippines, a Century Hence, he said, perhaps the people will revive their maritime and commercial activities for which the islanders have a natural aptitude, and free once more like the bird that leaves his cage, like the flower that returns to the open air, they will discover their good old qualities which they are losing little by little, and again became lovers of peace, gay, lively, smiling, hospitable, and fearless. So the National Quincentennial Committee last year has chosen the Balangay as one of the themes in the Word of our Ancestor. This was ginawa siya last year during the 500 countdown for the curriculum for primary and secondary school levels, no? And also to commission preparation manual on how to build a barangay as an intangible cultural heritage. Kasi pawala na siya eh. So dalawang culture na lang ang nakakagawa nito, no? So let us try to retain that. And lastly, if ever the bill will pass, we try to encourage coastal provinces or regions to build their own balangay boats. So this could be like a catalyst for a national balangay festival, an annual event that can promote solidarity of culture, maritime consciousness, and sailing as a sport, which has also the potential to be an international attraction in support of tourism and the environment. No? Uh, so it is our fervent wish sana na for this bill's passing. The Balangay symbolizes our collective dreams as a people. The boats are part of our national patrimony. They are a reminder of our grandeur from a time long ago. And may they serve again as a reminder for every Filipino's aspiration for a brighter future. So one people, one nation, one hope, tayo ay isang bangka. Maraming salamat po, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Fung Yu. Let me also acknowledge and recognize Mr. George Navarra of Butuan Global Forum. Mr. Navarra, nandiyan ba ho kayo?
A pleasant Thursday morning to all.
Morning.
Can I,
morning.
can I be heard now?
Yes, we can hear you.
First of all, I find it necessary to address the contention or the testimony of the National Museum about the source of the barangay word. I don't think the National Museum could say outright that the term barangay could not have come from Balangay, because it is the historians who traced how barangay came from the word balangay. Unfortunately for us Filipinos, it was a foreign historian, Dr. William Henry Scott, who wrote two books about barangay, where the source and origin of the term came from. Actually, the barangay is an Austronesian boat. It is not just a Philippine boat. It was the boat used by Austronesian peoples during their waves of migrations around Asia. The balangay is more of a boat building technology that is unique. The only boat building technology that puts the planks first before, before the structure, the ribs. In that sense, the boat building technology used by our ancestors in constructing the balangay would be the only one of its kind in this part of the world, not only in the Philippines. Studies before showed that the first balangay remnant dug up in Butuan was dated at 320 AD. But later scientific studies conducted by Dr. Mai Laksina proved that the balangay found in Butuan, which remains to be the oldest one, was actually dated from 787 to 984. However, no boat has been found to be older than that in this part of the world. There was a barangay relic or wreckage found in Indonesia that was dated centuries centuries later. So our barangay, our balangay remains to be the oldest of its kind found in the Philippines. In China, the dhows are the bigger ships. The smaller ships are called, I'm sorry, the biggest ships are called junks. Then the smaller ships were called the dhows and the kakams, were built during the Song Dynasty in 1960. Our balangays were built earlier than the Chinese junks, the Chinese dhows, and the other Chinese smaller boats. The balangays traveled as far as the Easter Islands. They had different names. Some balangay boats reached as far as Madagascar. If some of the relics of these boats rested for centuries under layers of soil with anaerobic conditions where there's no oxidation, those relics can be found, which will prove that the Balangay is not only a Philippine boat, it is an Austronesian boat. But it is only in the Philippines where 9 Balangay relics were found. They just happen to be in Butuan. But continuing scientific searches will prove that there are balangays lying under the earth somewhere in Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao, more particularly likely to be in the Batanes and Tawi-Tawi Islands. In Batanes, they call their boats Tataya and Palua. In Sulu, they call their boats Lepa, Basnig, but they all were built using the Balangay technology. In that sense, they're all Balangay boats. The Visayans were known for their karakoa. These are the boats used for pangangayaw. Pangangayaw is for raids. We were the most feared islanders in our part. The Chinese in South China were afraid and scampered for, for safety away from the shores when the karakoas of these islanders from what we now call Philippines would arrive. Pangangayaw is raiding, raiding for slaves and raiding for war. The Karakoas are balangays built as warships with two rows of cuttings used by the rowers and paddlers and by the soldiers in the other row. The point I am trying to make is that the balangays are not only Philippine boats, they are actually Austronesian boats. But we must lay claim to the Balangay as our national boat because it was only in the Philippines that 9 of these boats, a flotilla of balangays, were dug up in the Philippines. There will soon be other relics found in most likely Batanes and Tawi-Tawi. In that sense, we can say that the balangay truly symbolizes the Philippines' maritime heritage, the Philippines' maritime history, and the Philippines' maritime power. We in Team Balangay embarked on the voyage of the Balangay for the purpose of tracing the ancient roots of our seafaring ancestors, creating awareness among our people, particularly the youth, in our rich maritime heritage, and instilling pride among the youth of our nation in our people's historic role in the maritime history not only of the Philippines, not only of Asia but of the world. We, in many ways, succeeded. When the Balangay sailed around the Philippines, children, women, and even old people would go to the shore to wait for the Balangay's arrival, which would show that our people are in dire need of some tangible, touchable symbol to which they can identify our country's aspirations in the area of maritime power. I can now practically say, after 11 years of participation, close and active participation in the Balangay voyage, that the Balangays have reached the status of a national symbol that the Philippines must now use to unite our people, to make us aware that we were once the maritime power of Asia, feared by most coastal peoples in this part of the world. So in that sense, I would like to say that the Balangay is where the word barangay came from. In Cagayan, even if they name the boats Tataya and Paloa, when there are several of these boats docked together, those places were called Balangayan. You can check that with the old people of Cagayan Islands, the islands of Cagayan and in Batanes. They called the assembly of boats on the coast as Balangayan. In Sulu and Tawi-Tawi, they have the Lepa, they have the Basnig, but they all refer to them as Balangays because of the boat building technology. So may I submit that Team Balangay recommends with all the strength that we could master that this House Bill of Congressman Lawrence Fortun be approved so that the Philippines can have a symbol of its maritime power and a boat that will carry the hopes of our people that in the years to come, our country will regain its its position as a maritime power in the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Navarra. We are also joined by Attorney Josefa Sorera T of Butuan Global Forum.
Good morning, Senator.
Morning, Attorney.
Good, yeah. Thank you very much, Honorable Senator William Gatchalian, for inviting me. And I also give my greetings to Senator Amy Marcos and to the rest of the members of the committee. I am here to reiterate the plea for the immediate approval of this bill. I am not an expert on the history of of our maritime stories, nor am I an expert on the science of boat building, but I am a teacher. I've been teaching law, and because I'm a member of Butuan Global Forum, I have seen the effect of the story of the Balangay, not only to my law students, but to my children. Several years ago, at the start of the boat building, my little girl was part of that, and she learned a lot about that. This is a personal experience. There I saw how the Balanghay has inspired the young to dream again of being brilliant, being ingenious, and how they see the Balanghay as a unifying force. I teach legal ethics, Senator Gatchalian, and I also teach natural resources and environmental law. When I start my classes, I always talk about who the Filipino is. We have a lot of stories about who the Filipino is, but there is one thing lacking in our history, and that is the story that we are a people, the water people, in the words of, if I may say, if I may quote Yusek Art Valdez, this is a story that is not so much emphasized, but this is a story that would really inspire our people, because a lot have already been said of our rich maritime history. I have seen that when I tell the story of the Balangay to my students in law, you inspire them to take care of the waters. I've been teaching environmental law, and they are inspired to take care of our water resources. And now is the time to take care of that water resources, because our seas, our oceans are teeming with resources, and we have to protect that. So the Balangay boat will be there as an inspiration for our students, for our young, to take good care of the water, and to remind them that it is not true that we only were civilized when foreigners came here. No, we already had advanced technology. That is the brilliance that will be a reminder to all of us if we have the Balangay boat as our national boat, because it reminds us that we have been brilliant, not just today, not just uh, when our colonizer came, but even before that, because of the advanced technology of the Balangay. I end there. I wouldn't add, but I will just say, as a mother, as a teacher, I think it's high time we pass this bill so that we have a symbol of how we are, how great our maritime history is, and that even we will still be great in the future if we are able to look back and learn more about our maritime history. We have to protect our waters. It unifies us, Senator Gatchalian. Thank you very much, and I hope the bill will be approved.
Thank you, attorney. I have some questions, no, and unfortunately, we were not joined by the National Historical Commission today. But I will just ask the experts, and anyone can answer this. But I will ask this in particular to Mr. Navarra. Earlier, he mentioned that the Balangay is a symbol of our maritime power once upon a time. Mr. Navarra, can you describe to me what what made you say that? No, how was the Philippines a maritime power in the past, and what were the events that led to that to the Philippines that made us a maritime power? What were the events that led to that?
In the Senator Gatchalian, thank you for your question. In the area of trade and commerce, the Balanghais went to China, went to Champa, which was a vassal of China, to carry on trade relations. Because of the Balanghais, our country, our islands then, became a center of maritime trade in old Asia. When we talk of a naval force, the Balanghais, particularly through the Caracoas, were feared in coastal communities in South China and in other islands of the Philippines because the Caracoas were built mostly by people of the Visayas and Mindanao. They're called Caracoas, but they're also Balangais. They were feared because they were known to be raiders. Kung in blunt terms, mga pirates din yung mga ninuno natin. So ang piracy nila, they carried it through the Balangais in the form of the huge battleships called Caracoa. Wala tayong organized navy noon kasi tribal ang nature ng society. But yung mga boats natin, pag nakita na mga 10, 5, nagtatakbuhan na yung mga nasa shores. There are continuing researches being made in China to look for accounts in Chinese annals where a balangay is actually described. But in 1400, 1470, 1417, the balangays arrived in Beijing through the Grand Canal at the time, and they were given by the emperor a very big welcome. Unfortunately, on the way out of the Grand Canal, the Sultan of Sulu died, and the emperor insisted that he be buried in China with full honors that an emperor would get. They built him a 1-hectare tomb, and his descendants were given Chinese nationality. There are now 21 generations of the older son and 19 generations of the younger son still living in that city and in that province. Those are proofs that our balangays carried the force that people respected. And in many ways, because the balangays called lepas were also houseboats, the, the, the assembly of balangays in one community would give that community the power to deter attacks against that coastal community. During the time of the balangays, before the arrival of the Spaniards, just a display of the balangays docked on the coast would deter pirates and raiders from going to that community. In the Spanish times, they actually stopped or killed our balangay boat building technology. They had to use hamleting to protect the shores. In that sense, I would like to restate the position I had earlier stated that our balangays represented the naval power of the Philippines in trade and in war. Not the kind of full-scale war, but those little wars fought in islands and in communities. Because of the balangays, nakilala tayo sa mga isla sa Asia. Hindi lang balangays galing sa Pilipinas, pati yung ibang balangay. Kasi sa Indonesia, pag sumisigaw ang mga tao ng barangay, ibig sabihin nandyan na yung mga raiders. Siguro mga taga-Sulu na yon. Kasi ang balangay nga, nasa Batanes, nasa Cagayan Valley, nasa Tawi-Tawi, nasa Sulu. Yung nasa Butuan ang nakita, relics. Pwede pa na hindi gawa sa Butuan yon. Nagpunta lang doon kasi ang Butuan, center of maritime trade at the time because of the gold in Butuan. So, and there are books to support what would be my theories now. Unfortunately nga, sulat ng mga foreign historians. William Henry Scott would tell us how the barangay war started. There's a book by a Spanish friar about boat building technology that will show the prowess of our barangay fleets. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone who wants to comment on that? I also want to ask, no, from the body, what were the major historical successes of the barangay? What were the historical significance, major historical significance of the barangay? For example, was it involved in any discovery? Was it involved in any economic development? Mr. Navarro mentioned about trade, but was it a major tool for any discoveries? I want to ask the body, no, any historical success or historical significance by the barangay?
Mr. Chair, can
Yes.
I? Yeah,
Yes, Mr. Valdez,
Art
go ahead.
Valdez, yeah. Mr. Chair, the seafaring culture developed because we built the boat. By having the boat, we were able to develop that kind of culture. Let me just cite you an example. You remember when Magellan, this was written by Pigafetta. When they arrived they were fed when they met Raha Humabon. They were fed with maize. You remember that? They were fed with corn. Corn is not indigenous to the Philippines. Corn came from Latin America. When Magellan arrived here, they were fed with corn. What does it imply? May say, our forefathers may have crossed the Pacific long before the coming of the colonials, riding in a boat like this Balangay. This has been shown by Professor Curusio. There is this black current that crossed the Pacific, just like the jet stream, according to the pilots. At a certain time of the year, the current goes to Latin America. At a certain time of the year, it goes back here. Somehow, because we were able to develop a boat, we developed that kind of seafaring culture. And that seafaring culture is in our DNA. Let me concretely share with you. Me personally and my team, Dr. Ted and the rest of the Balangay team, are mountaineers. We're not even seafarers. But how did we learn how to sail? Because we have a boat, and without even any formal training, we sailed, trying to follow our forefathers when they sailed with those ancient boats. And we sailed with the wind. We called it powered by the wind and steered by the stars. The first time we built that Diwata ng Lahi, Mr. Chair, we really have nothing, no equipment. What we have is simply courage, that we are the inheritors of the maritime pride of our ancestors. So if you talk about, is there something significant that historically we can cite? No, the boat was used by our forefathers, not only by the Filipinos, but by Austronesians. Because upon the advent of the Middle Age, they can build bigger boats. And they use that in order to inhabit the vast Pacific and Indian Oceans. The anthropological relics had shown that indeed the movement came from mainland Asia to reach the different islands of the Pacific and Indian Ocean. And they rode on a boat, which is a hull boat, which we called it the Balangay in our own language, although it's called different names for that matter, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that insight. Any more reaction from the body? And then I have also another
Chair.
question, and this is a very basic question. Who invented the balangay? Which culture or that time, which um, uh, tribe or sino ho ang nag-invent nito? Was it endemic here in the Philippines? Was it brought? I know before everyone was crisscrossing from Malaysia to Indonesia, but from your expert opinions, who invented this? Who invented balangay?
Mr. Would
Yes,
you
Mr.
allow me to speak again, Mr. Chair? You know, the Austronesians are the people that live in coastal mainland Asia. And what is unique about this boat, Mr. Chair, is that, you know, presently when you build a boat, isn't it, you put up a keel, and then you put up the ribs, and then after the ribs, you put up the siding or the walls, you know. That's how the present boat, it is called frame first construction. The keel, then the ribs, which is the frame, and then the wall, the siding. Ang balangay, it is shell first construction. You have the keel, then they put up the planks. The ribs is the last one. The ribs is the last, or the frame is the last when they built the boat. And this boat is built without any how do you call it, any design, any pattern. It is simply in the memory of the master builder. I think the boat building came from our forefathers when they built this boat to cross to leave the mainland Asia in those ancient times, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Valdez, was it developed here in the Philippines, that technique, or was it
Mr. Chair,
brought from, let's say, Malaysia? Alam mo, before people were crisscrossing the seas. So I'm just curious lang, was it innovated and developed here in our country, or was it brought from Malaysia to our country, or to anywhere from Asia? No?
no, I think that there is commonality in the kind of boat, Mr. Chair. In other places, it's called kura-kura. Here we called it karakua. So there is commonality among the Malay. You know, basically before we were called Filipinos, we were really Malay, Indo. We are a Malay Polynesian. So we built a boat of that kind. It's a generic boat, but it's as Judy Navarra mentioned, only in the Philippines an ancient relics can be found. So we are claiming it that indeed boat is really a product of that proud maritime history of our time.
That's my next question, Mr. Valdez.
Mm.
Can other countries claim that they invented this boat and it just washed up to our shore, or transferred technology to our shores? My point of the matter is,
Mm.
um, uh, of course, by declaring it a national boat, that means that this is endemic to us. No, we developed this technology, but I'm just playing devil's advocate. Wouldn't other countries say that this technology is also from ours because people were moving around during those times?
This is a Malay boat because if you look into that uh, 7th century or 4th century, the European colonizers have not reached our shores. It's a Malay boat, and we're part of that the great Malayan race. You can find that kind of boat in
If this
Malaysia or Indonesia, but the ancient, the oldest can only is found in Butuan. So on that note, we are claiming it to be our own boat.
we're saying is the oldest of all, balangay, or the oldest Balangay Boat ever discovered is here in the Philippines. It's in Butuan.
Yes.
So
Yes,
it those so wala hong ibang na-discover na balangay na ganito kaluma in other countries.
Meron din, I think, the National Museum, when we were doing a research, mentioned that somewhere in the waters of off Hulu in Sulusi, may mga relics ng Balangay Boat down below na hindi pa naangat. So it's not only in Butuan. There are other places that you can find this kind of boat. The National Museum has not yet gone into that underwater relics somewhere off Pulu Island.
But to date, to date only Butuan in relation to the world has the oldest balangay.
Yes, it's only in Butuan. It's a fleet of boats that are found in Butuan in 1976, and I think they're still finding additional boats. I think latest that it's a big boat, and on top of that big boat, there's a small boat. So which simply signify that Butuan is an ancient kingdom. That's why Butuanos are at times they're proud to say there was Butuan before the Philippines. So if you look into that, originally it was 320 AD, and now 7th century. We're just, I think we're even just as old as the Vikings. And if you look at how the Vikings built their boat, it's also something, there's some similarity, except it is not fastened by dowels, pins and dowels. They sew it, they're sewing. Tinatahi nila yung kanilang mga planks. Yun ang difference ng Viking boat. And of course, because there's so much story about the Vikings, it becomes more popular. But our boat is just as old as the Vikings or even older. And totoo yun, at one time, we're the most feared in the whole of Southeast Asia. Ni-raid natin pati yung mainland Asia. And these are the people there, mga Iranons, these are the people somewhere off Zamboanga. That is the place where this great warrior sailors came from. Yeah, that at one time we're the most feared in this region.
Anyone who wants to join in the topic po, feel free to just raise your hands and join in the topic. Yes, go ahead, sir. Yes, go ahead, Dr. Ted. Pero naka-mute ho kayo.
I heard.
We cannot hear you, Dr. Ted.
Hello? Test? Am I heard?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I just would like to add to the statement of Sir Art Barles, our expedition leader. About the Crucio or the Black Current. On the other side of the world, the Indian Ocean, if you see also some features of people in Madagascar, there are like a stock there or certain population that look like us, no? Because we've been sailing across Indian Ocean. Kaya nga po nadala natin yung breed ng mga kabayo dito eh. Kasi kung titingnan natin yung distribution ng mga domesticated animals na when they're being domesticated. Actually, we don't grow horses here. So we have horses because we got them from somewhere in the Arabia. So this is the extent from left to right, no? When I face the north, left to right, yung biyahe ng ating mga balangay, and it contributed to the growth of the region. I'll bring you back, sir, to your concern na distinct lang ba sa Pilipinas. So nung bago tayo sinakop ng mga banyaga, pinaghati-hati tayo, we were called Nusantara during the Majapahit. Ito'y sabi pa ni Wilhelm Solheim, parang Nusantao, no? We were all one. And when we were separated, each Southeast Asian nation created some sort of symbols of their own. Now, I don't see any problem if we make Balangay as our symbol because like Finland, Sweden, Norway, Iceland, their symbol is like some sort of a Nordic symbol, mga Vikings. Medyo okay lang eh. Tayo, walang gumagamit ng balangay, baka pwede nating maunahan sila. Like Russia, because I think the flag of Alaska, they use the bear. No? So, pwedeng magkaroon ng duplication but there's nothing wrong kung mauna tayo as, using Balangay Boat as our symbol. And talking about war, Mr. Chair, na pag-aralan ko sa war history, na isa sa kinakatakutan ng mga galyon ay yung mga maliliit na balangay na sumisingit sa gilid-gilid ng galyon. Kasi ang galyon po, hindi nakakababa yung kanyon. So ang ginagawa ng mga ancestors natin fighting the Spanish with their, the galleons there, pinapana nila yon with apoy. Kaya galit na galit yung Espanyol. That's why hindi nila matalo sa dagat, doon sa boat building area nila tinatalo. So other than our bards, martial arts instructors, yung kititir siya kali, yung ating mga boat builders, hinay-hinay po yung na-eliminate lahat. Ang hindi na lang siguro naabot ng mga conquistador ay yung nasa dulo ng Tawi-Tawi sa kadulo ng Batanes. So they literally killed us, our identity, Mr. Chair, because it's not the killing of the physical body in winning the war. To win the war, you have to kill the psyche of the people. And when the psychological aspect of that is killed, itikin mo na lang yung tao, Mr. Chair, mawawala na yun. This is what happened to our race. Kaya nagkawendang-wendang tayo ngayon. Kaya nung umakyat kami sa Everest, people were rallying, wow! Pag nakakita tayo ng Lea Salonga or Pacquiao, we were rallying na ang galing nila. Because somewhere at the back of our mind, Mr. Chair, we are a lost people. We are looking for champion. Making this balangay as a symbol of respect, I like it when we are being termed as tayo'y kinakatakutan at ginagalang noon, will enable us and our youth to find an anchor point of the greatness, something, one great totem pole na doon natin pagbabasihan. It might be like the Philippine Eagle, but Balangay is more culturally descriptive because pag sinabi mong Philippine Eagle, Davao lang yun eh. Balangay is the whole archipelago. And it can even be a symbol that all Southeast Asian nations can relate because nakikita din nila, the Malaysians, Indonesians, Brunei, even Taiwan, they can see that. Now, in the growth of this nation, I think we need also these neighbors. But we have to give them a symbol that we are respectable, Filipinos also, by carrying that kind of the great symbol. So thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Esquera. Dr. Esquera, I have a simple question, no? Because I also took note that in other parts of our country, there are other boats, no? For example, in Zamboanga, may Vinta. In Tawi-Tawi, they have their own type of boat there. What makes the Balanghay or Balangay special compared to the other uh, endemic boats in the Philippines? Why is it special compared to the Vinta? And why is it special compared to, let's say, the I see here in the notes Tataya.
Mhm.
So an
Okay.
bakit po special ang Balangay?
Mr. Chair, actually the word Balangay is the generic term. It's fleet of boats. Marami po siyang pangalan. Yung mga binabanggit niyo po, kasama po siya sa Balangay boats. Shapes and sizes. Depende ano ang purpose niya. Pag nakakita kayo may cottage, ito shallow river, parang river approach to. Kasi depende sa usage niya kung ano yung tinatawag nating geographical position mo. If you are in the raiding, no? Kasi noon medyo legal pa ang slave trade, tumatawid tayo sa South China, West Philippine Sea, ginagamitan natin ng mga garay, the bigger war vessels. So lepak is a houseboat. So the terms that like baroto, Paloto, Piroka, Bidok, Lapid, Lepak, Biray, Buwang, depende kung saang tribo siya. These are all balangay boats. So the word balangay is actually a fleet of boats of different shapes and sizes.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead po.
Yun po. Gusto ko lang din Valenzuela po ako, Senator.
Doc.
Valenzuela, yeah. Yung rescue team mo po doon, suki po ako po nag-train.
Thank you, thank you.
And
Thank you.
I'm proud lang po.
Sobra silang busy ngayon. Almost di na natulog because of what's happening. They're on standby. Thank you,
Kasi
thank you.
pinagmayabang ko yung rescue center natin na nandun na lahat. Pag nagtuturo ako, ginagamit ko po siya, Mr. Chair, na gusto kong gayahin ng iba-ibang LGU. Meron
Thank you.
satellite ambulance units. Tinuturo ko po yung rescue team. Suki po ako doon kay Dr. Antonio Arnaldo. Lagi po ako nagtuturo doon, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you for your service. Maraming salamat po. Anyone who wants to share po from the body?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, go ahead po. Mr. Navarro, go ahead.
Yes. I just would like to mention, in relation to your question about the maritime power of the Philippines, because I forgot to mention several details. On the trade missions alone that the Philippines, well, the islands in the Philippines sent to China would prove that we were indeed part of the empire that ruled the oceans. Because in the old days, those empires, so-called empires, were not actually empires by conquest and occupation. They were more empires because they controlled the sea lanes. And those who passed must pay tribute. Like the Majapahit, the Sri Bisaya, they were empires more because of the control of the sea lanes, not because that they conquered or occupied territories. There were a few of those conquests and occupations. The Philippines was part of those empires that ruled the seas. That's why we needed to have peaceful relations, cordial relations, and peaceful coexistence with the known powers at the time, or the known users of the sea lanes. The first trade mission from the Kingdom of Butuan riding on Balangays was in 1003 AD, followed by the 1417 trade mission of the Sultan of Sulu, riding on 5 or more balangays with 300 people. He was eventually given a royal burial because he died on his way out of the Grand Canal. The maritime Silk Road that connected China, Southeast Asia, the Indian continent, the Arabian Peninsula, Somalia, Egypt, and Europe, the trade flourished there because the balangays participated in the transport of cargoes and peoples. The balangays reached as far as the Easter Islands, and as Doc Ted mentioned, as far as Madagascar, where some of the descendants of our sailors are still living there. In total, over 760 years before the Spaniards came, we had 17 balangay voyages to parts of Asia, which proved that we were not, at least the islands that had the balangays, were not pushovers. We were respected and feared. Now, on the issue of history, whether the balangays are endemic to the Philippines, we should be modest enough to admit that we cannot put a historical claim to that. But we can claim that the most number of balangays were found in the Philippines. There will be more found, most likely in Batanes and in the islands of Cagayan Valley, and Tawi-Tawi and Sulu. Recently, there was a balangay wreckage. They call it barangay wreckage found in Indonesian waters, but it was too recent construction compared to ours. The extant balangay that was still flying the waters of the Philippines was built at the turn of the century in 1900. In 1920, it was just docked, and that balanghay has been brought to Manila by Tony Pet Araneta. All I'm trying to say is this: history may later say that there were balangays in other places, but only the Philippines can claim to have a flotilla of those balangays found with dates as far as 320 AD, if that would be followed. But if the correction would be followed, it was in the 787 year, 400 years later, but still predating the Chinese junks. Now, in Malaysia, as Art mentioned, there are balangays, but they call them by different names. They use the same boat building technology. So I would close by saying that the balangay is more of a boat building technology. Any boat that is built according to that technology is a balangay. It comes with different names. The basnig, the lepa, which is a houseboat, the tataya, the palua in the north of Luzon, they're all balangays using the same technology. And we can also lay claim to this. The only boat builders that are still using that technology after centuries would be our boat builders in Tawi-Tawi and maybe some in Sulu and in the Batanes Islands, Ibatan and Sabtang. Those are the historical claims that we can actually put a lock on. The most number of Balangan relics were found in the Philippines, and the boat building experts, master boat builders, using the Balangay technology, continue to build boats in the Philippines under different names. But the generic name is Balangay. Thank you.
Mr. Valdez, Mr. Navarra, if Balangay is a technology, it's a boat building technology. Wouldn't it declaring Balangay as a national boat in effect declaring the technology, not the boat itself? And if it's a generic technology, wouldn't we declare generic technology or my point is we're declaring a generic item or a generic process, in this case a generic technology. So wouldn't it be dangerous to declare a generic technology as a national boat? Naisip ko lang
Ano?
kung remember, I don't know if you
Mm.
guys have followed yung case ng Ginebra San Miguel. No, Ginebra is a generic term for gin, no? But San Miguel uh, applied it for trademark, and the counter argument of the other gin makers is you're applying a generic term. No? So my point here is, aren't we declaring a generic term a national vote? Yeah, anyone can answer.
Yeah,
Any
yeah.
of the experts can answer.
May I answer first?
Mm.
Yes, Mr. Navarro, and I think Mr. Valdez wants to
Anyway,
also answer.
Art will have a more profound answer, most likely. But my answer simply relies on the use of the word balangay by Pigafetta. That's the first time that the word balangay, although he spelled it as balanghay, but H is silent because they didn't have this diacritical marks at the time. When H follows a G, the G should be pronounced as ga, not as ja. So anyway, when he wrote balangay, that was the first time that the world encountered the term balangay. It came to represent those boats that were built according to this technology. And I would dare say that perhaps 70-80% of the boats under that technology continue to be called balangays, barangays, berais. The variations are Karakoa, which is the balangay pangangayaw ship or battleship, raiding ship. The lepa is the balangay, built like a balangay in every way, but it is a houseboat. The tataya and palua of Cagayan and Batanes would have rounder hulls, but they're still built according to the Balangay technology. But as I mentioned earlier, when those boats congregate on the shore, the place is called Balangayan. The boats may be called Pataya, Paloa, or whatever, but when they congregate, the people there in olden times called the assembly of boats Balangayan, which supported the theory also of Dr. William Henry Scott, why barangay would come from Balangay, partly because of the Balangayan term that was used to refer to the assembly of boats in a coastal or riverine location. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Valdez, any comments po? Mr. Valdez, naka-mute po kayo.
Well,
Okay na po. Okay.
the technology is a part of the process of the balangay. Balangay is really the boat, and during ancient time, it is built on a shell first construction. When we built a replica of the boat, we followed the technology. But at the later stage, especially if we have to keep on building boats, we will not be able to build a shell first construction because there are no more woods. The next balangay will be made up of fiberglass. The hull is still shaped the same, but it is a totally different kind of technology because there are no more woods to build that kind of boat. So, but still, the hull, the shape, is still the balangay. It is just a matter of how it is being constructed. During ancient time, that's how they did it. As it evolved, there's still bangka or casco or that has slowly evolved and built on a frame first construction. And I think the next kind of balangay that we'll be building will be made of fiberglass simply because there are no more wood and simply because Marina will not register any more hull that is not made of fiberglass. So it is in an evolving process. But still, it's still a bangka or a balangay for that matter.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Valdez. Truly, this is a very interesting and insightful conversation, and I'm learning a lot from this conversation of ours. Again, my understanding before was purely from a public service point of view, wherein the barangay was created because of the word balangay. But I learned today that it's deeper than that, and it represents our maritime history, maritime culture, and most especially, maritime power during those times. And with that, I really want to connect it to our potential, which is the maritime industry of the present day. I truly believe the Philippines is built for that. With our island, with our archipelagic feature, the Philippines can be a maritime powerhouse. And we're already seeing that with the numerous OFWs working in the maritime industry globally. No, and they're in demand. No, it's not because we want to go out, but they are in demand. And then I want to see the day that our compatriots will not only be line workers, but really first officers and captains of the major ships. No, and I think that is highly possible. So with that,
Mr.
already
Chairman.
exhausted all of my questions. I would like to hear from, yes, somebody was meron pong gusto magsalita.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Is that Mr. Navarro? Navarra? Sino po yun?
Mr. Chair.
Yes?
Mr. Chairman,
Ah,
regarding the question on whether or not we are declaring the boat
yes,
or
Miss.
the technology.
Congress, Congressman Fortun? Kayo ba yun?
Yes, yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Kong Lawrence.
Can I be heard, Mr. Chairman? Yes. Mr. Chairman, dun sa question ng question kung ano bang dinedeclare natin dito, is it the boat or the technology? I think, Mr. Chairman, because we're declaring a national symbol, we should be declaring the boat itself as the national symbol. not just the technology, but the boat itself, that tangible thing, the boat itself as the national boat. But that boat is, of course, representative of the technology. It's representative of the ideals of our seafaring, boat building ancestors in developing and carrying on that technology. So since we're declaring a symbol, Mr. Chairman, it has to be something really tangible. So we're declaring the Balangay as a national boat, and that national boat, that Balangay, is representative of the technology, representative of the ideals of community, of solidarity, of harmony, of courage, of resilience, involved, in building the boat and sailing the boat. That's my position, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, in addition, Mr. Chairman, to address the question of the concern of the National Commission for Culture and the Arts regarding uh, the Balangay, referring not only to those found in Butuan, but to all other boats so that may be found elsewhere. Mr. Chairman, the original text, when it was filed in the House, referred only to those found in Butuan, the relics there. But we've addressed that, Mr. Chairman. In Section 3 of the bill, it says, the Balangay found in Butuan City and as may be found elsewhere in the country is hereby declared the national boat of the Philippines. So we're not referring only to those found in Butuan, Mr. Chairman. Currently, the relics are only in Butuan, but Section 3 speaks as well of those that may be found elsewhere in the future in the country.
Thank you, Kong Lawrence. And we have uh, for his last words, Mr. Miss Loris Fileo. She's also here with us. And uh, ma'am, any last words po before we terminate the hearing?
Mr. Chairman, and my apologies for my late participation, and good morning to everyone. I think everything has been covered, but during yesterday when I found out late last night that everyone was supposed to give a position paper. I don't have a position paper, but the thing, I mean, everyone knows what enabling provision should be given that we would like to suggest to this committee. And the rationale behind that being, if we tell our children that, in the future, that the national boat is balangay, but if there are no balangays, they will not know what it is. It will not be a living heritage. It's like when you say the eagle is our national bird, but if the eagle is extinct, and uh, then you will know what it looks like, what its properties are. And the balangay is not just a boat, but it's also a symbol of the community, the government, in its own unit, of Philippine society. And therefore, when you're speaking of that it should be a living heritage, then it should be seen. And so far, it's only been a few group of people, and most of them are here, who have made the effort to build it at their own expense and using their own resources. So it would be, I think, um, in a way, uh, a a not very effective law if it does not provide for the support and the continuance of the building of this boat and support of it. The details, I think my colleagues have already expressed earlier. So it is just, I'm just putting in my own uh, persuasion, my own suggestion as to what this bill should contain to enable it to become really an effective symbol of, and a living symbol of our national heritage. That's all, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ma'am Loris, and thank you for sharing with us. Well, after an exhaustive discussion on this bill, we'll be endorsing to plenary House Bill number 4953. And we would like to request from the panel your position paper, if you have one. Please submit it to the committee on or before June 4. After this, we'll be crafting the committee report already. We will consider House Bill 4953 as the main bill, and we will also consider some amendments if the other senators will have some amendments, and then later on sponsor it on the floor. We would like to get more information about the barangay, so feel free to submit to us more information so that it will enrich our discussion during plenary.
Mr.
So
Chair, pwedeng pahabol?
yes, yes,
Pahabol, Mr.
of
Chair.
course,
Okay.
Kong Lawrence.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. Ah, gusto ko lang bigyan ng details yung sinabi ni Ms. Loris Ilian, Mr. Chair. I have with me a copy of their position. They want actually to put in more, put in like enabling provisions as follows. Number one, inclusion of Balangay modules in the curriculum for primary and secondary school levels. Number two, commissioning the preparation of a manual on how to build a balangay as an intangible cultural heritage. Number three, to encourage coastal provinces to build their own balangay boats as an annual event, etc., Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, this representation welcomes these suggestions. My only concern, Mr. Chairman, is the one subject rule under the Constitution. The one subject rule, Mr. Chairman, if I may, says under Article 6, Section 1, that every bill passed by Congress shall embrace only one subject, which shall be expressed in the title thereof. Since the title of the bill, Mr. Chairman, is one of declaring Balangay as a national boat, I don't know, Mr. Chairman, if these provisions, if included, would uh, embrace another subject. But if this is allowed, Mr. Chairman, I would personally, Mr. Chairman, propose that these amendments be included.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, last na lang, medyo
Yes,
pwede. Yeah.
before I recognize you, Mr. Valdez, let me just respond to
Mm.
the query of Congressman Fortun. We will study that. You made a good point on the one subject rule. In fact, I was discussing with my staff. I was actually thinking of inserting some form of activity. For example, maybe a festival or maybe a activity so that it's not only declaring it as a national boat, but also having physical activity to commemorate and to also have some visualization of what we are declaring as a national boat. No? So I was actually thinking along the lines, but we will review the jurisprudence on this type of legislation, and I will give you feedback. No? But definitely, we'll take note of the suggestions from Ms. Luris and the other resource persons. We recognize Mr. Valdez.
Mr. Chair, this taking off from what Loris is saying, for the past 11, 12 years, we built 5 balangays to put life and meaning into what is a balangay. But we did it as a private group, the Kaya ng Pinoy and Global Forum. Butuan Global Forum, we partnered together and built the balangay. At this stage, Mr. Chair, I'm about to put finish on my boat building and balangay sailing. I think what is important is that this has to be sustained by allocating some amount to build a balangay boat for some activities, including technology transfer. I think we did that from the private sector, Mr. Chair, and having the balangay as a national boat. I think from here on, the government must be able to come in and allocate something in order to create sustainability to this national boat program. That's all, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Valdez. We'll take note of that, and we'll take note of the suggestion of Ms. Laris and the comment of Congressman Lawrence. With that, I thank everyone for your time, and this is truly an interesting, very insightful discussion, and I learned a lot today. And we will endorse this to plenary, and hopefully we can get this approved within the year. Thank you, thank you, thank you to everyone. This meeting is hereby adjourned.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Stay
Mr.
safe.
Chairman.
Ingat po kayo.
Finally.
Thank
Thank
you very much. Thank you,
Thank you,
Mr.
everyone.
Chair.
Thank
Thank
you.
you
Thank
so
you, Mr.
much.
Chair.